Hey there, welcome back to the Choose to Think podcast. This is Victoria, and I am so glad that you're here. You know, it means a ton to me that you're stopping by. Maybe you're letting me kind of get in your ear a little bit as you're walking or running or just doing life, running errands or working around the house. I really appreciate the fact that you take your time to tune in with me. So thank you so much. I'm glad you're here. And today you're in for a real treat because we're going to go back. You'll remember the Fired Up Mind Challenge that was way back in January. Well, I took some of my favorite snippets from session 6 and I put them here for you today. And basically it's a quiz. There are 10 questions and I'm going to put you to the test and see if you can tell whether these 10 thoughts in this quiz, example questions, they're posed as thoughts that we may have, if they are true or false, if they are what I call vineyard or garden thoughts, that's where we want our thoughts to be, or whether they're thoughts that lead us through a door down into darkness, icky thoughts that we certainly don't want to have. You'll also hear from 4 of the participants. I love it when they chime in because they have such wonderful insights to offer. And also you'll see what they were thinking as we went through the challenge. So please stay tuned. Again, I'm so glad you're here. One of the images that comes up so quickly for me in my mind is that I get to choose between the darkened doorway or the vineyard or the garden. And I simplify every thought and every emotion and every feeling and every mindset. I kind of put them side by side like this. And I'm reminding myself that I get to choose. And the door that goes into the darkened space, you can see that it's like kind of wide all the way around, but then you're walking to step through that, you would be walking into the darkness. And then of course on the right side, you see what would represent it's actually a vineyard, or you can think of the garden if you want. And so when I'm really struggling with my thoughts, I can ask myself, Victoria, what benefit is it to you to walk through the door that leads to darkness versus walking through the threshold into God's vineyard or garden? And you and I together, we could come up with just a long list of what happens in that darkened room. There is chaos, accusation, lies, lack of peace, gnashing, conflict, and we could just go on and on and on and on with what we get if we go down there, versus the garden and this beautiful picture of walking with God in his vineyard, working for him, laboring for him, where there's no lack of any good thing. There's no scarcity. It's abundance. It is light filled. It is, our relationship with him is joyful. It's intimate. It's relational. We're never alone. Can you just picture the difference between those two? And so when I ask myself, what benefit is it for me to go through that darkened doorway? A lot of times that's enough of a stop in my spirit, a check in my spirit to get me to pivot very quickly, because I know there's no benefit. The only benefit would be maybe something that I might learn in the long run. You know, they say the best thing about being hit over the head with a hammer is when it's over, right? So, and okay, what can I learn from that? Thank goodness it's over. And I'm not saying that I don't go into that darkened doorway sometimes, but I'm very much aware of it. Matter of fact, I have my dear mentor that I've talked about so much. She once told me, I was chatting with her on the phone, this was years ago, and she said, you know that you're going down to the pit, Victoria, right now, with everything I'm hearing you say and I'm listening to you. Do you know you're headed down there? And she said, when you get down there, you're going to be eating dirt. She put it that way. And she's like, Victoria, is that what you want to eat? You want to eat that right now? And I'm like, oh, good grief. And sometimes I would call her and say, Jeannie, hey, I need to go to the pit for 5 minutes. Will you please go with me? Yes, I want to eat some dirt right now. I just need to do this. And so, we kind of joke about that a little bit. But now, and that would be maybe venting with a friend, but more than I vent with even my dearest friends, I vent with the Lord. I almost, I still have issues and things that I take up with my friends. My friends are so dear to me and very important that I have those sounding boards. Sometimes I need their counsel. But but I try more often than not just to vent with the Lord, but I'm doing it kind of over in the garden, and I'm like, what's going on over here, and this and this and this. And that's a little bit of a safer place for me to be, I think, because my words are powerful, and I want to watch what I say, even to my closest friends, because the more I say things, the more they're kind of coming into being. It's very hard because we're women and we want to connect and we want to really do that, but and there's a time and a place for all of this, but I want you to have this I want you to have this image as well, and this sense of the power in your words. There's life or death in the power of your tongue. The Bible even tells us that. There's life and death in your choices. And I'm not saying that every emotion and feeling bad. I think we've already established that. It's not that it's bad, but if it's persistent, it can take me and lead me into a direction that I don't want to go. This is the test, 10 questions. And you're going to write or choose. You don't have to write it down if you don't want. D means darkness, V means vineyard, and N is neutral. And these are just a variety of thoughts. There are 10 of them. And I want you to think which direction would this take you if you chose to interact and engage this thought, believe this thought? Would it take you toward the door of darkness, or would it take you into the vineyard, into the garden? Number 1, you are my provider, Lord. I know that you all said V on that one for vineyard, because why is this a vineyard thought? It's a vineyard thought because it declares God's character. It says who God is. That's a vineyard thought. Okay? I can't find my car keys. Number 2. What'd you think on that one?
I thought it was neutral.
Kelly?
I said neutral as well.
It's just
Kathleen? Okay.
Neutral.
I'm hearing neutral. Yes, that is definitely neutral. It is a life event. It is your reality. It is something that happened. It's based on something that's, going on, like it's raining outside. Okay, that is a neutral thought to have. There's nothing charged about that. Another example could be COVID is claiming lives. Okay, or Kroger and Walmart require me to wear a mask to go grocery shopping. Those are all neutral, reality-based thoughts. We may not like them, we may not agree with them, but in general, we would say these are just, they're truth-filled, they're what's happening. But a little warning on this, because reality is difficult, or it can be. Reality can be really hard and it can be challenging. And so what's good to do in the scenario when we're just having neutral thoughts float through our minds, and we'll have thousands of them in a day, is that we have to learn what God says about the situation. So that if we notice that we have a neutral thought about our reality, and we notice that it's kind of morphing into that going toward the darkness, then we need to say, whoa, this is becoming a darkness thought, a darker thought. And because I'm forgetting about what God says about this reality and about this situation. So, we don't want to always give way to our thoughts and feelings about them, whether we like them or we don't. All right, number 3, God's word says he will never leave nor forsake me. And you all said vineyard. That's a vineyard thought because it is filled with hope, security, and trust. It comes directly from God's word. So we know it's a vineyard thought because it's what God says about himself, as well as what he says about me. Number 4, I really want that donut. Anybody?
I put D.
So did I. That's temptation.
Well, it might be temptation for some of us, and for others of us, we're like, no, that's just a neutral thought. So in general, this is a recognition that we do have like otherwise fleshly thoughts, but they don't have to be necessarily, it doesn't mean that they're sinful. necessarily. And this is one of those thoughts again, right? Where we just want to be careful, because this could be an invitation to say, come on over through the dark door, because, oh, you deserve that donut. You're so tired, you need to eat this donut, or it's going to make you feel so much better. It may, you may be able to partner with the enemy to take you to, especially if you're trying to watch your brain foods and your healthy choices, then yes, by all means, it's a temptation, but it's not in and of itself, it's neutral. Because if I said, I really want that cocaine hit, okay, yeah, that really seems a little bit more scary, but it's still just it's otherwise neutral. That wouldn't tempt me at all. And that wouldn't even be on my radar. So it doesn't have that pull for me. But and again, just emphasizing that it's just an acknowledgement of a feeling or a state of being or a condition. There's a donut. I might like to have it. Nothing wrong yet, but if we keep looking at that donut, thinking, and then seeing it, right? Remember the impact of the visual. If you're really trying to avoid sugar, then you're putting it right in front of yourself, and it's or maybe you were at an office or something and you saw it. I don't know, but let's see some of the notes I wrote down on this one. If we are characterized as an individual who eats foods that are good for our brains and bodies, we instantly shut that thought down because we've rewired our brains to desire the reward that comes from making a better food choice than sugar and empty carbs. Also, God tells us to exercise our self-control. So sometimes the reality is just whatever thought it might be is kind of an invitation, to me, do we need to operate under self-control at this point? Because if we don't, we may find ourselves definitely headed down that door that leads to darkness. Number 5, this always happens to me.
I said D, darkness.
Why'd you say that?
That's just such an all-encompassing, self-pitying, this always happens to me. It's just it's so dark and negative, and I just reading that makes me feel down. I don't know.
Yeah, me too.
If somebody said that, I'd want to refute it. So it's sad. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, and let's just think logic. I'm talking like in any of the classes that you have ever taken, what did your teacher say about those objective exams and tests, those questions where they're true, false? If you see the word always or never, you have to go false. It's false. And so if it's really not true to say that this always happens to me, because furthermore, what's going to happen in the future, you may be forgetting a time that it didn't happen to you, who knows? But definitely that always and never are life robbers, and they're a welcome mat to what you said, April, which was self-pity. So if you go back to the picture of the door, also picture a little welcome mat right at the threshold of that dark door, and it's inscribed and it says welcome, and you look down and it says self-pity, welcome here. Because self-pity for me has always been a big one. It's like, I'm standing on self-pity. I'm standing on that welcome mat, and I really want to feel sorry for myself because doggone it, this always happens to me. Why, Lord? Why? That kind of thought. That is just an invitation. I'm just a little teeny step away from partnering with the enemy and playing on his team. And then I have to ask myself, Victoria, what benefit is it to you to partner with the enemy, to think these thoughts and go there? What is there's no benefit. Pivot, get over here, get on the path to the garden, reframe your thinking, and let's go. And it helps to change very quickly that way. So beyond go ahead.
Victoria, I
Yes.
also said D for defeated because it's a very defeatist statement, I think,
Perfect.
to say
It
that
is.
always happens to me,
Yep.
which speaks to the point of being, self-pity.
Yes, exactly. It's that self-focused thinking that takes us down and fast.
And before we go on, let's take a quick break from our sponsor.
All right, how about number 6? I'm so overwhelmed. Who wants that one?
Well, I put D because I think some of the thoughts can really spiral. If you're not disciplined enough just to recognize it and let it go, then these thoughts can just spiral into other things. And then you're drudging up things that in the past that should be long gone,
Yeah.
Because I've seen it for myself. Personally, I have done, I'm not going to say I've never done it, but I know people who it has spiraled into, and it's it's hard to deal with people like that. You just don't know what to say to make them feel better. So that's what I put D, because I just think that kind of thought could lead to, unless you're disciplined enough.
Yep. And I would agree. That was my first thought. For me, it's a D. For me personally, that's a D. That's a dark thought that takes me to no good end. There is no benefit for me to keep telling myself, I'm so overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, I can't do my life. I hate my life. This isn't working. I can't do it's. But some of you may have put in because you say, well, wait a minute, that's my reality. That's just how I'm feeling. It's an emotion. It's not really good or bad. And I can get that. But for me personally, this one would be a D, because I am pretty quick to snag this thought. And you know why? It's because God tells me that he is not a God of chaos, and he's not the God of overwhelm. That's not how he operates. So when I say that thought, it's in reference to me, not in reference to God and his character, who he says he is, who he says I am, and what he says about my situation. So I always have to come back to those three categories: who God is, what God says about me, and what God says about my circumstance. Those are the thoughts that bring life and that are truth filled. And if I'm finding myself too much on these other thoughts, then it's an invitation for me to go to a place where there is absolutely no benefit for me there. In this world, we will have trouble. That, remember Jesus saying that, but he says, I have come to overcome that and to leave you with peace. And do I ever find any peace if I'm focused on the overwhelm that I have? I don't. But God has given me a sound mind and a spirit of power and love and self-control. And that's when I feel like I'm like up to here with, I've got so much to do. Then I have to calm myself down and say, Lord, your word says that you have given me your peace. Your word says that you are with me now. Your word says I am yoked to you and I'm under your submission. Your word says that there's joy and life to be had, and I'm going to be productive, and I'm going to be under the yoke of Christ, and I'm going to work for you. I'm going to work and worship, because there are some Hebrew words where the word work, like tilling the garden, really means worship. And so I love that thought. So when I'm feeling like here with so many things to do, I'm like, you know what, this is worshiping you, Lord, and I'm going to enjoy this process. Help me to get those things done that I need to get done first. Help me to make good use of my, I totally switch it from this overwhelmed feeling and chaos and where do I start and I can't do this, to something that suddenly has action. It's their actionable items that are filled with energy and truth, and I put myself back, that mental image, back in the garden, back yoked where I need to be. Number 7, God is my refuge.
D, of
That's
course.
a vineyard thought. Yeah, because again, any quality of God that you're telling yourself is going to be a vineyard thought. Any characteristic of God. Anytime you start with God and what he says about himself, about you, your situation, you are walking in the garden. Number 8, nobody appreciates me.
That's a D.
That's a D. You got the word nobody. Nobody, everybody, those are absolutes. Logically, just like always and never, those are, false. Now, but let's say that your husband or your child or your parent does something that indicates they don't appreciate you. And that's kind of what you're saying is your reality. Then at that point, you might want to see that thought like, my son really doesn't appreciate me, or my husband, or my mom, my dad, they don't appreciate me. Okay, that may be true. You may be absolutely right that you have poured your heart and soul out and they just don't appreciate it, and that is truth. They might even tell you they don't appreciate it. Let's just say that's the reality. They don't appreciate you and all that you've done for them. Okay, and that may be real, but careful. Suddenly you're on that doormat again. You're standing right before that door again. And you might want to see that thought, if you're not careful, as an invitation to come through the darkened door. You have a choice in the matter. You can choose to overlook the offense. You can choose to forgive. You might even want to confront them on their behavior. I'm not sure. But if you avoid dealing with the issue, you may still find yourself sitting in the darkness, and you may be stewing and steaming and resenting and fostering a bitter root of rejection, resentment, and that sort of. I know I have before in my life. But just know that for as hard as this is to kind of take in, it really is your choice. The purpose of mind renewal is to train our brains to focus on what God says about the situation, what the situation might be revealing about God in your relationship with him even. And you can ask him what he wants you to learn about this as you're being refined through the fire, so to speak, and through all the tough things that actually happen in life. Number 9, God provides a way out when I'm tempted. We know that's a vineyard thought. That is truth. He tells us that. That's something he does for us by his spirit. And number 10 is also a definite vineyard thought, because, and I use that a lot too. I could use the contrast of, does this thought, is this an enemy dart that, and he's just baiting me, that bait of Satan, so to speak. He wants me to play on his team. I don't want to play for the enemy's team. I don't want to put my suit on and have a big E on my shirt and be hoo for the enemy, and not to over spiritualize all of this either, but we are in a spiritual battle. The Bible's very clear about that, and the Bible tells us to armor up. We want to play on God's team, which means we're putting on his suit, right? We're dressing out for God's team, which means we're wearing all the armor that's there for us that he gives us. So how did you guys do on the quiz? Anybody get a 10?
Yeah.
10 out of 10. Good. Well, see, yep. So what's the problem?
That was easy.
It was easy. Oh. What's the problem then? Where's the disconnect for us? Why do we find ourselves over in that darkened room then?
Because I think that sometimes we respond negatively, almost like a reflex action, or I should say we react as opposed to processing and responding.
Yep. And that's where we get back into those habits and the neuroplasticity. Remember that the more you practice these, the better you'll get. And the less and less and less and less, the fewer times you'll actually walk through that darkened door, because you've trained your brain, you've trained it, and now you're in that groove, and it's stronger and stronger and stronger, and you realize the reward. Your brain wants a reward. Literally, your brain is looking for a reward. And the more emotion, the more positive emotion you associate with these new habits that you're developing, the more you'll want that reward. For me, it is a reward to be in the garden with my thoughts. It is a blessing, and I want that blessing. A part of why I want that blessing is because I personally desire emotional well-being and solid health. But I also want to serve. I want to help, and I want to be a light to other kingdom kids that are out there like you running around. I want to help others as well. I'm going back to the question I asked a little bit ago as we're winding down, and I'm wondering if you could articulate, if you can think of something, how this challenge, this Fired Up Mind challenge, has in any way helped you achieve what you set out to achieve when we started.
For me, the biggest takeaway, because I'm already at this point in my life, watching what I'm eating, reading my labels, and eating pretty healthy, pretty clean. So I think the things that I struggle with is my mindset. And I think it's interesting to like kind of really delve into what thoughts are consistent and where do those thoughts lead me. And just to be, for me, just to be conscious of them, because maybe they've been around so long that maybe I'm just not even paying attention anymore. And just letting them go and wondering why nothing is progressing. So for me, it's just about being conscious of those thoughts that may be hidden.
Thank you for sharing, Kelly.
For me, it was the idea of taking thoughts captive. That really resonated with me. And although I have been meditating infrequently for the last 7, maybe even 10 years, this course is inspiring me to find that time every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, to be still and just listen to the voice within. So thank you so much, Victoria, for blessing us with your insights and sharing what you knew.
I think for me, I'm learning that just becoming more aware of the thoughts I'm having is huge, because sometimes I'm having all kinds of thoughts and I don't even realize I'm having them. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, why am I thinking this? What's going on? Let's break this down. So just learning how to break it down and work through it has been so helpful. And like I had a quick example the other day, somebody from a massage place called and said the girl I go to has a cancellation. Would you like to come? And I swear it took me like 10 minutes to work through that issue. And you would think, well, that's a good thing. Your self-care, it's, relaxing. Why would I not want to go? And after I sat there and took it apart, what I realized was that I had actually blocked that time out to do some heart work, and I was actually really in the mood to do the heart work. So even though that was a positive thing of a massage, in that moment, it was better for me and healthier for me to choose to say no to that. Whereas before I would have probably went because I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, there was a, cancellation, I should go. So even with something positive, I guess I'm learning that too, that you've got to kind of break down your thoughts and say, why am I having this? What's going on, and dissect it. And then once you can work through that and get to the bottom of it, then you're free and you can let go of it and move on to the next thing. And that's what's imperative for me, because I get stuck in that loop of thoughts that just I can't get out of sometimes. So
Yeah. Thank
Very
you for
helpful.
sharing. Thank you so much. You hit it right there, because being aware of our thoughts, just what we're thinking, it sounds so easy, but if we have upwards of 60,000 thoughts a day, that's a lot of thoughts. And so it is a discipline, and I call it the art of taking thoughts captive, because it requires discipline and persistence. But the more we do it, the better we get. So
Several things, but I think one of the big things are how the idea of different habits in my life that I wanted to change and was struggling with, and a certain toxic thought process that I've had since childhood and that the Lord had really worked on and brought me through, but I still know I guess you would call it roots that still pops up sometimes in different ways. And I've recognized where that comes from, but just some of the things you taught have really helped me to identify before they spiral so far out of control, my thoughts have gone off the deep end. And so I have seen improvement with that. So thank you. Habits in life. You gave real practical tips on how to change habits. And that's been such a blessing. So
Good. Yay. And to the point that you're making about roots, and you're just doing life, and then all of a sudden, boom, even in the garden. I mean, the serpent came into the garden. And you also, I think I talked before about birds flying overhead, and then birds eliminate, and in their their bird dew, there's seeds that can then sprout up again. So it's, and I know that God can completely heal, and I don't even know if it's an issue of healing, so to speak, but it's just sometimes out of the blue we have a memory or a recollection or something that can kind of work against us, but we're very quick at noticing it. So it's I think until we are the other side of heaven, we may still have to contend with some of these things, but at least we can have the tools and that quick stop to say, nope, there's no benefit in engaging that thought or that emotion. That was then, this is now. Thank you, Lord, for how far you've brought me. Let's go. And then keep moving in the same direction. So even that's a little, I was at a point where I could just beat myself up for every little thought I had. It was like, what's going on, and why can't I get through this? And even when God's healed, it could creep up again, not by anything we're doing, not by the fact that we haven't been healed even, but it's just something that can erupt, but it's not going to grab us by the throat at this point. It's not going to be suffocating at that point.
And that's a wrap, Brain Changer. But hey, how did you do on the quiz? I bet you scored an A+. And listen, if you'd like that image of the door that leads to darkness versus the idyllic vineyard or garden, be sure to snag the free one-page PDF from the link in the show notes. It's all yours. This visual makes a great way to vet your thoughts and help you to see where you are spending your mind's energy. Also, guess what the t-shirt design is for this episode? It is, I choose to live in the garden today. It has a double meaning, especially for all those gardening enthusiasts, and makes a great gift. Check out the design from the show notes. Finally, it is 100% scientifically proven that if you rate and review the Choose to Think podcast on Apple Podcasts, I will officially love you with all my heart. Even sending the show link to a friend or posting on social media will really help me get the word out and help others find the show. Thank you so much. And until next time, Dios primero y que Dios te bendiga. Ciao.